As you know, we've called for an immediate ceasefire, which is a long-term stopping of the fighting. But that doesn't mean to say that we wouldn't grab the opportunity of any time when the fighting stops to get much more aid in. So I hope this works for the sake of the hostages first and their families, but also because I think it'll give us a chance to do our job in Gaza.
So you have been, on the front line of this since the beginning, but you've also been, UN Special Envoy and advisor to many, many, many issues. Yemen, Syria, you've been in UNICEF, you've been doing this for a long time, head of relief operations, NGOs, the whole lot. Have you ever seen anything like this? Well, how do you assess what's happening right now in terms of humanitarian needs in Gaza?
The worst ever, Christiane, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, I started off in my 20s dealing with the Khmer Rouge, and you remember how bad that was, the killing fields and so forth. But 68% of the people killed in Gaza are women and children. They stopped counting the numbers of children killed after 4,500 had been counted. Nobody goes to school in Gaza. Nobody knows what their future is. Hospitals have become a place of war, not of curing. No, I don't think I've seen anything like this before. It's complete and utter carnage.
Martin Griffiths, as you know, the Israelis say 1,200 of their people were slaughtered on October 7th. And as we know, around 240 hostages were taken, including babies, old people, infirm, etc. The Palestinian authorities say that 12,000 plus people have been killed in Gaza. We believe, you've said 68% are women and children. There must be a combination of civilians and I suppose combatants. But how do you analyze the pushback from the Israelis, sometimes even the Americans, that we can't even trust these numbers? How long have you been relying on Palestinian Ministry of Health numbers? How accurate have they been over the years? And now we're having to say, Hamas run or authorities in Ramallah. Can you break all that down for us?
Yes, UNRWA, which has been there for these many, many decades, as you know, running these institutions, helping other institutions to function. They and we in my office have indeed been using the statistics provided, for example, from the Ministry of Health in Gaza, and have triangulated them over the years to make sure that we feel confident about them. So we have a long history. We don't put these figures out without thought. And I think people can trust us enough to know that when we say these things, it's pretty likely to be close to the truth. And frankly, the extent of it, the numbers are so awful that it's kind of academic, wondering whether there's a few thousand here or there. The fact that there are more children killed in this conflict than in any other that we can think of ever, as my Secretary General has said. You don't need to worry about whether there's 100 more or 100 less, except if you're in the 100. You just have to recognize this is as bad as it gets.
So, Martin Griffiths, with all your experience, why do you think the Israelis, the spokespeople, the government, people who speak on behalf of them, are so fixated on the fact that we shouldn't believe these figures this time? I've never seen it before.
Well, you're much more familiar than I am, Christiane, so I think that's very interesting. You should say that. I think it's because, first of all, that October the 7th was an absolute horrific nightmare. I'm among those people who've seen the compilation videos of what happened on those days and the trauma it clearly and understandably has caused to many, many families in Israel. Number two, the numbers, 11,000, 13,000, whatever it is, in Gaza, killed. The numbers displaced, 4 out of 5 people alive in Gaza displaced. 1.6 million people no longer at their homes. I mean, of course, you can understand why Israel would want to challenge these figures, because they are so horrific and they have led to such a global reaction. Gaza is a global crisis, as you know. It's not just a crisis about Gaza. It's a crisis about humanity. It's a crisis which affects politicians across the world. It's a crisis which brings people out onto the streets in great numbers. And it's a crisis which destroys our faith, built up over many decades, that war should not be the first option. And I'm terrified to see that in this case, that's not true. War has become the option of the day, and the suffering that comes from it is astronomical.